Hello, and welcome to another episode of Esoterica and Nonsense, a podcast where we discuss myths, legends, folk tales, fairy tales, supernatural phenomenon, and religions from around the world. I am here on a Monday night. I am your local Pleiadian pepper named Annabelle, and I'm here with my dear friend, Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
I'm so excited to see you. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I just want to, tell the audience really quickly a little bit about you because I really manifested you in my life back in 2015. I was going through a really crazy time. That's a story for another time. But I was living the trap life. I was hanging out with dangerous people. I was selling weed. I was growing weed. And I quit. They sucked. And I decided to do a yoga teacher training. And the yoga teacher training was problematic. But I knew that I had to do it to meet interesting people. And through all these people I met, I ended up going to a party. And I manifested my dream job, and you were there at that party, and you were wearing a magical crystal around your neck. And we talked about your crystal for probably 15 minutes. I didn't even know your name. And then after I asked your name, I found out what you did, which was grow weed with a bunch of women, which is what I was manifesting. And so I gave you my number, and I said, you need me. You're going to call me. And you said, actually, we're not hiring. I don't really need you. So I don't think I'm going to call you. And I said, you are going to call me and you need me. Just mark my words. And I think you called me like 2 weeks later and I got hired. And so since then, we've had a beautiful friendship. And nowadays, I don't really get to see you so much. But one of the greatest gifts that you gave me and where I really want to start talking to you about is that you exposed me to Barbara Marciniak. A woman who channels the Pleiadians. I think I've touched on her briefly, but you're really kind of like my most knowledgeable friend. I hear the BART.
There it is.
Everyone, this is the Bay Area Rapid Transit. We're here in San Leandro. Welcome to the Bay Area. Okay, so this is just an open-ended question, but how is it that you were introduced to the extraterrestrial community? You know so much about extraterrestrials and aliens. Same.
Good question. I was actually wondering this week. Like, when did I jump into this world of like believing in all the things? And I don't actually know. Like, I was thinking back to elementary school even, and I would like draw alien heads in my journal.
Yes.
And yeah, it was just, it's really hard to pinpoint like a consciousness shift, because I feel like I've just always been on that page of like, yeah, that makes sense that there are other beings out there, and why wouldn't we be able to contact them? Why shouldn't we be able to know who they are and be able to interact with them even? I do remember when I was going to elementary school, one day I was walking to the bus stop with my sister, and I remember seeing a UFO off in the field in the distance.
And this was rural Ohio?
Ohio, yeah. Cincinnati, Ohio. Fairfield, Ohio. Yeah, we were walking to the bus stop in the morning. And
what year was this? What year?
This was, oh my gosh, 1990, 1991, somewhere in there.
So you were just a kid.
Yeah, I was young. Or no, it was maybe 92, because my sister was going to school with me, so I was a little bit older. I would have been in 3rd grade. And there was a I mean, to me, it looked like the size of maybe a toy. Like, it didn't look very big. And it was probably a quarter mile ahead of us, past the bus stop, looking into this field. And it was spinning. There were lights on it. It was spinning, and it just slowly started levitating, lifting off the ground. And
What shape? Was it a disc shape?
It was a disc shape, yeah. And it went up slowly and sped up and sped up and sped up, and it just went straight up and out, like past the clouds, just kept going and accelerated as it was going up. And I remember seeing this, and it wasn't even something that was that spectacular. It was just like, wow, I wonder what that is, or I wonder who was flying that, or it was just like I don't know how to call it, but it didn't seem crazy.
Yeah.
As little childhood Michael saw it. And even remembering back, like I remember asking my sister later if she remembered about it, and she didn't have a memory of it. And so then I was like, did I dream this? Was this even real?
Is she older or younger?
She's younger.
Yeah. Well, maybe she was too young to remember.
Maybe. Yeah. So there is that. And I remember that kind of like encapsulating this idea of like curiosity of life, or curiosity of like other beings. And then the second thing that I remember having an impact on me, there was this movie called The Flight of the Navigator.
Yes! I love that movie.
You know it.
I just rewatched it recently. Fantastic film.
I saw this when I was a kid, and like, so if you haven't ever seen this movie, it's basically where this kid meets a craft, really. Before he meets any extraterrestrial, he kind of comes upon this spacecraft, which turns out to be somewhat conscious. Like, he can interact with the craft, and he can interface with it and fly the craft.
But first they isolate him. He falls into a time loop where 8 years pass. He goes to pick up his brother, and so he goes through the woods. He falls into a canyon with his dog, and then he like wakes up in the middle of the night, and he's like, oh shit, I need to go home. So he goes home, and when he gets home, other people live there, and everything's redecorated, and he's like, where's my mom and dad? And then he goes to the police, and they like can't find any missing persons reports, but then they find one that's the exact same name as him, exact same clothes, but it's 8 years prior. And they reunite him with his family, and they thought that he was dead. They've moved on. His younger brother is now his older brother. And his parents are like so excited, but basically NASA kind of like manipulates them to make them think that they have to study him. So it kind of almost turns into an ET situation where like NASA has a deal from his parents to study him for 2 weeks or something, and then he ends up escaping from NASA and then he meets the craft, but the craft orchestrated all of this.
Oh, I'm so glad you've seen it recently. It's been over a decade since I've seen it. I remember all that, but I had forgotten it.
It's and it's a Disney movie.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it came out in like the late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, no, I think it's like 1988 or something. It's definitely the 80s.
So that, whenever I saw that, I mean, I watched that movie so many times as a kid, and it really, like, I was just journaling about it last week, because I was asking myself, like, when did, I was doing some inner child work and going back into, like, some of my memories and just trying to integrate this part of myself that's so excited about like elevating consciousness and this whole ascension process, and like just wondering, when did this start, and how can I integrate this excitement now into like wherever it began. And that's when I remembered about this movie, and just how passionate I felt about this idea of like this kid who nobody believes that stumbles upon something that's magical and changes his life, and it's just kind of like him versus the world in the movie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think what you're touching on, there's like a really big part of the movie where NASA can't understand why this is happening to him. And eventually, when he sneaks onto the spaceship, they couldn't open the spaceship. They had it in a lab, and they were trying to open it for months and months and months.
Yeah.
And when he goes to it, it just it opens for him, and he gets in. And so they can't understand what's happening. And the spaceship explains to him that they need a consciousness. It doesn't have to be human, but they need a consciousness that they can use to download maps on. Like the spaceship can't, it needs a navigator. And even though the spaceship is conscious and can speak and can make jokes and it has a personality, it like depends on this symbiotic relationship. And I think part of what's so exciting about the movie is that reminder that as humans, our brains are a massive computer, a computer that can surpass computers that we have access to right now. They're mega computers. They're super intelligent. And that movie is really kind of about that. And it's really about this random kid has that ability. It's a special film.
It really is. So yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think I'm just trying to answer the question of like, was there something that shifted in me, or was there always this spark of like interest in magic and extraterrestrials and like the spirit world? And I really just think it's always been there, but it's just activated through different things. And I've always known that the things that activate me are the things that like I get excited about, or I dive into, or I, let take me down however many rabbit holes.
Did you ever have like a breakthrough? Like, I'll give you an example. When I was like a senior in high school, I didn't want to do my homework, so I stayed up all night watching YouTube videos, and I stumbled across, you ended up telling me about it on the phone. It's like an animated cartoon educational thing, but they talk about aliens, or they talk about Jesus. You were telling me about it?
Is it Spirit Science?
Spirit Science, okay. So I was a senior in high school. I went on a total YouTube spiral. I think I watched like a 2-hour documentary on Annie Besant, who was at one point the head of the Masonic Church. Before Freemasonry was Freemasonry, it was theology, and theology was banned in Europe. And a really big reason why the United States was separated was because people who were theologists wanted to practice theology, and that's why they separated from England. But they used Freemasonry as a code name. They're like, oh, we're just talking about buildings and architecture, but it was really theology. Anyway, so I think that's where the night started. And then it just led me to video after video after video, and then I stumbled across Spirit Science. And I think because Spirit Science is like animated, and the animations are so juvenile that I think I was a little skeptical, but some of the things that they were saying were really resonating with me, because they had mentioned, like, I think the Anunnaki. That was the first time I had heard that. And when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I do remember thinking a lot about aliens. I remember having visions of my parents as like blue beings, people with blue skin and bald heads, and I was like, I think those are my parents. I don't think these are my parents here. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I kept like kind of looking at the sky a lot as a kid, but this is when I was like a toddler. But anyway, when I was a senior in high school, I went on this YouTube tangent, and I swear the same week after school, I was on the sidewalk, and this guy comes up to me, this like middle-aged man comes up to me, and he's like, I know you. And I said, like, I don't think I know you. And he said, no, we've met before. I'm sure of it. I think we met last week at some like convention in San Jose. And I was in high school. I was like, I was not at this convention, dude. I go to fucking high school. I mean, I didn't say that to him, but I said, like, I know for sure I wasn't at this convention. And he was like, no, you were. Stop lying to me. I know you were. And then we ended up taking the same bus, and this was the bus I took every day home. And he said, I take this bus every day. And I was like, no, you didn't. I've never seen you. But he ended up telling me this crazy story that he was born in the year of the dragon, on the day of the dragon, and then he ended up taking a trip to China, and he went to the province of the dragon, and he went to the palace of the dragon, and outside he found a stone that was the size of a giant grapefruit, and it was glowing jade, which is one of the most rare stones on earth, and it literally glows. If you charge it in the sun, it glows at night. And he found a rock that was probably worth $5 million, and he found it on the ground. So he believes it was placed there by an extraterrestrial. That's what he told me, because it's at a tourist location. It's not like it was, there for hundreds of years undiscovered. People would have seen it. So he picked it up, and from that moment on, his whole life changed. And he was telling me that, like, now he sells the stone for a living. He talks to aliens. He told me he was abducted by aliens. And this was 2 days after I went on this alien tangent. And he told me that he had done yoga in his backyard, and he had his eyes closed. And when he opened his eyes, there was an orbital ship that was made out of light, and it beamed him up, and then he lost his memory. And then a month later, I was walking in downtown Berkeley. I was still a senior in high school. This man was at a stoplight with me, and he was like, hey, I have some weed. Do you want to smoke weed? And at that time in my life, I would always say yes. That was my policy. If someone asked to smoke weed, I'd say yes. So smoked weed with this random middle-aged man. And he told me almost the same story. He told me that when he was in his 20s, he had done Tai Chi. He was a little stoned. He had done Tai Chi. His eyes were closed. When he opened his eyes, there was an orbital ship made out of light, and it pulled him up, and he doesn't remember. So, like, that was my breakthrough, kind of. I had, like, thought about aliens, but then I did all this research, and then people started coming up to me. Does that resonate with you at all? Do you have, like, a moment that, like, you feel like your life kind of changed or, like, switched over? Because my impression of you is that you've always been pretty far out. I think of you as an alien.
Yeah, I don't really... It's hard to pinpoint that. Like, the intensity has been turned up, especially since, like, all of this awakening shit has gone on. And, like, since COVID especially, I mean... just the ability to, like, go down rabbit holes and, like, find information, I mean, comes along kind of with the internet, and, like, the ability to find information. But it's not really different. It's just more intense. Yeah, I don't think there's a switch that, like, turned on or flipped. It's just been, like, a knob that's been steadily being cranked up and cranked up.
Got it. I love that. Yeah. That makes total sense to me, because you're far out. So I want to talk about Barbara Marciniak for a second, and then we can branch out. But in a nutshell, I've talked a little bit about her, but in a nutshell, like, I want to hear from your perspective, like, about the Pleiadians. How would you summarize Barbara Marciniak and the Pleiadians, and, like, the overall message that they focus on?
So I think my introduction to Barbara Marciniak was after a deep dive that I went into Bashar. And Bashar is an extraterrestrial channeled by Daryl Anka, who is, like, a filmmaker. I think he works in Hollywood. And I got into him and just started watching his videos and learning about his teachings. And it opened this box of curiosity of, like, ooh, there's now this route of, like, channeling people who are channeling other entities that I can go into. And so I got really excited about like learning about all that was. And I don't even know how specifically it was, but that's how I landed on Barbara Marciniak. And I think the first book that I read by her was The Bringers of the Dawn.
Yeah.
And man, that book is just, it's so filled with light, and it's so positive, and it's a little bit different than the like stories of dark ETs and like, you know, just a lot of the other information out there that you find when one goes down these rabbit holes. A lot of it's pretty dark, and some of it's, I would say some of it is maybe questionable as far as where it will lead you to. And so reading this book, Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak, shifted this idea of like, ooh, going down rabbit holes can be elevating. It can be something that I learn from, I gain wisdom from, but also I can gain a greater spiritual perspective, rather than like, guess what dark shit that I found out that's going on in the world. Which, yeah, I still get excited about that stuff too, but that was one thing that I just so resonated with, of this idea of like, almost like the ability to elevate yourself spiritually by tapping into certain types of information or certain books. And so this is why I got into Barbara and what she teaches. The Pleiadians, who she channels, are beings in the Pleiades star system, and they are higher dimensional beings. So I don't know that we would understand them as like three-dimensional. They would be more of like light beings. And there's so many channels these days that you can check out that tune into the Pleiadians and use their healing techniques, or are kind of helping with disseminating what their messages are, which their messages are always surrounded by love, acceptance, acceleration, integration. It's a lot of these kind of spiritually evolved kind of ideologies. And yeah, I got into, after that book, I read one called Earth, the Living Library, I think is what it's called. And it just took me that much further, because all of the like flowery love and light that the Bringers of the Dawn gave, it kind of took that further, but also gave a really great historical picture of our world, of the earth, and that we're a library, and that there, genetically, there's so much here that has been seeded from places all throughout the cosmos.
Right. I've heard about this, and so the idea is that this planet, because of its conditions, ideal conditions for life, that eons ago, or however long ago, long time ago, that different extraterrestrials planted DNA here like a library. And so it can evolve and interact with itself, but almost so that it doesn't go extinct on its home planet, or that if its home planet, if those conditions cease to exist, then they exist somewhere, which for now is Earth, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the theory.
Yes.
And that really resonates with me, because like sometimes I think now so many adults are like, just, yeah, this is how it is. But as a kid, I was like, you mean to tell me that I am cut from the same cloth as an octopus? Like, that doesn't look, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like even humans, we don't really look like we fit in here. And I mean, really, that is part of the history that they teach. We really don't fit in here. We aren't really. We have some native blood and a lot of extraterrestrial blood. Absolutely. And that really makes sense because if you look around, we don't really fit into the mold here. But technically all of us are we're all a little bit of ET and a little bit of native blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and this idea is what I think touches back to like what sparks interest in me, is this idea of like, okay, I align with this concept of like, I'm not just an earthling. I'm not just here because I was born here, but like my consciousness is a lot greater. And if I integrate all of those parts, I can recognize pieces that come from the cosmos that are not just human intelligence or not just the history of what we know of, but connected to other greater consciousness. And so the Pleiadians really, I think their teachings kind of helped me to see, or helped me to seek that the things that I do align with in this way, and just kind of broadening my scope of where I allow myself to take in information from.
That's so exciting. Oh, and I'm so happy that you turned me on to her, because back in those days, she was on YouTube. Now, not so much. She took most of her stuff off, which I get, because when I was starting to listen to her on my free time, my YouTube algorithm would be like, coming up next, the Pleiadians want to kill you. You know, and it was obviously like all this like jargon nonsense. But they had some really cool videos up at that time on YouTube, and it really changed my life because it was really reaffirming things that I knew deep within myself that I had never allowed myself to explore, because at that point in time, most people weren't really interested in thinking about those things, or there was almost like people were embarrassed to pursue conversations about extraterrestrials or whatever. And I've actually never been able to find it on the I think now Barbara Marciniak has a website and then distributes audio files through Bandcamp or something, but I haven't been able to find this one recording that used to be on YouTube, and it's called Barbara Marciniak Multidimensional Realities. I'm pretty sure. Multidimensional something. I'm pretty sure it was multidimensional reality. And it was, I think, like an hour and a half long recording. And it was talking about time space. Because as humans, we see time space as a line, a linear experience. And of course it's not, but it's hard for us to fathom sometimes without allegories, because it's so from our experience so abstract. But in this recording, they did a past life regression meditation. Mm. And it was really cool because it wasn't open-ended. It was specific. And the past life meditation was specifically to remember a ceremony at the Great Pyramids of Giza, because what the Pleiadians said was that every single person alive on planet Earth right now has attended at least one ceremony at the Pyramids of Giza, because it's such an energy. Metaphorically, it's like a gas station for energy, and to have the energy to incarnate right now, you would have to have attended at least one. It was like a power up. Mm-hmm. And I had a successful regression, and I'm going to tell you about it. It's so funny. Maybe I have told you about it before. It's pretty funny. It's pretty classic Annabelle. So I was a woman. I was tall. I was long and tall and slender, and I had brown skin, and long hair that was pretty long, like flirting with my butt. And I had a pretty big butt. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I was in white. Everyone was in white. I had white fabric draped over me, not quite like a toga, Egyptian style white draped fabric. I had sandals, and everyone was in white fabric and sandals. A lot of the men were wearing sarongs just around their waist. A lot of the women had like 2 pieces or sometimes a 1 piece. I'm pretty sure I was in like a 2 piece. I had like a bra and a skirt. And the pyramid was painted white. It had a gold top, and it was glowing purple. And the pyramid was making a sound like a singing bowl. It was like, and everyone, there was hundreds of people. So people had traveled from all over Egypt, presumably, possibly Africa. And people were slowly, like, it wasn't chaotic, but they were slowly just getting close to the pyramid. Kind of like in Mecca. What's the name of the cube in Islam?
The Kaaba stone.
Yes, the Kaaba. It was very much like videos I've seen of that. Like, there was no pushing and shoving, but everyone was like magnetically gravitating towards it, like in a spiral. And people would get closer as some people came further out, but it was mesmerizing. But I was hanging back, so I had a front row seat, but I wasn't a part of that. I was standing and watching regally like a stallion. Like, I was standing up straight, and my boyfriend was behind me, and he was like grabbing my ass cheeks and jiggling them, like he was playing with my ass. And I don't even know what he looks like. He was behind me, and I was standing there watching this procession as my boyfriend just like played with my ass. And just the thought going through my head was like, I'm so hot. And what's so funny is when I had this regression at the time, I was not in a place where I found myself attractive, and I also wasn't, I just had a lot of hang-ups with like my femininity. And so like anytime I like dressed up or even put a little makeup on, like I got really uncomfortable. It was all too vain for me, and I think it was really rooted in self-loathing. But when I had this memory, I actually didn't think it was funny. I was like disappointed in myself. I was like, oh, what a selfish bitch I was. Like, I just wish I had been more present. Or, like, I don't know, I was like judging myself. And then as time went on, I think it's so funny because I was probably in my 20s, like I was loving life. I was living life. I was loving life. And I was just... You
had the greatest seat or the greatest view.
Yeah, I was enjoying the regal procession, and I was enjoying myself. And so my boyfriend was enjoying me too.
I love that. That's great. And I've heard a lot of either channels or people who are like study the pyramids talk about how it had a white marble coating, and like the entire thing was marble, and the capstone, and there were ceremonies where they used frequencies, and they would use sound and lights, but also the pyramid would activate and resonate sound and lights, which is what you're describing.
Yeah, no, literally, it was real life. And it was actually, out of all the past life regressions I've had, because I've had a few, it was the most vivid. Sometimes in the other past life regressions I've had, it's almost like a montage, or like just memories that are kind of faded. Mm-hmm. But that was a short moment, but it was very real. Mm-hmm. So it felt like I was really there. And I think a big part of that was the pyramid itself. Like, the pyramid's presence was visceral. Mm-hmm. And I was really enjoying it.
I love that. I haven't heard that story.
But the Pleiadians led me through that meditation.
Yeah, I would love to get a hold of that. I've only done one past life regression, and
How did it go?
It was actually a couple weeks ago, pretty recently. Um, it was through a video also, and I just went into meditation and followed along. It was so I don't identify myself as clairvoyant, but with that said, I did get some images. When I go into that meditative state, the way that things come for me are less like it's more like a packet, like a download, rather than like, oh, I'm seeing this, or I'm seeing this image, or I'm re-experiencing going through this scene. It's more like a flash that I then have to sit and like unpack it, sometimes for 20-30 minutes, just to recognize what was there and what was included in that packet that I had downloaded. And so sometimes it's visuals, but more often it's like feelings or knowings or this kind of thing. So all that to say, my memories, or what came back, was this life where I was wandering around it seemed like a lifetime of wandering and looking for somebody to connect with, looking at people's eyes, trying to like make connection, to only learn that they were judging me or they were looking down on me. And I got the sense that I was some kind of a transient, like maybe homeless, or like a lower rung of the societal structure. And there was this feeling of being dirty, of being like I couldn't get away from my own sense of like filth. And this is what other people recognized when they saw me, is this filth. And there's this overwhelming feeling of wanting to transcend that by like wandering around, trying to find somebody to connect with,
To
recognize me and just see me. But instead, everyone was recognizing what my appearance was, or whatever they saw was not what I wanted them to see. And it just felt, it's hard to explain how I resonate with that today, or how I connect with that idea. And maybe I'm still unpacking it a little bit, but there's just this idea of like wandering around, wandering from this place to this place, and like maybe all I have is with me, but there's just this sense of like never really arriving at where I wanted to be. And there were a couple glimpses of like me walking around, or my like dirty matted hair in my face, or like covering my eyes, and really just this feeling of like wanting to make eye contact, wanting to have human connection, and missing out on that. I felt like I never got that through that lifetime experience.
Oh, I just wish I could give that person a hug. Do you have an idea of like what time period or what region this was in, maybe?
It's hard to say. I think the only things that I like brought back from that meditation were these feelings of like wanting connection, wanting warmth, wanting to feel clean, wanting to feel like held, wanting to feel cared for. There's really no memory, or no memory of like technology or any of those kinds of things. It's hard to say what time frame. I feel like when I think about like caste system, that seems really relevant to what that experience was.
That's what I was thinking about. It does sound like maybe it was noticeable for others that you were in the lower or lowest caste, recognizably. So it was like an easy, I don't want to look at them, yeah. And how painful, because I haven't by any means experienced that in this life, but I have had days or nights where I don't have a place to go and I don't have any money, and you pass by a house with all its lights on and you can smell food, or you can hear a movie on or hear people laughing, and it's like, can I come over? Like it's hard to put into words. Real loneliness, real loneliness, especially when you don't even have a home or like a place that you belong.
Yeah, there is this sense in this life current where I have always had the ability to like walk, just keep walking and like walk for miles even. And I've noticed a lot of times when I'm with other people, somebody's visiting where I live and I'm walking around with them, people will make comments about like, are we still walking? Like, do we have to walk if we take the bus? Or like, there's just a lot of times in my life where I've noticed like, yeah, I'm down to walk. I'm down to get anywhere. Like, sure, it's 4 miles. Like, I'll walk there. It's not a big deal. So when I was having this memory, when I was going back, when I was regressing, this is the main thing that kept coming up as like, oh, this is how I can resonate with this life, is just my comfortability to like, just to go and walk and traverse and like, hiking, whatever, all of the things that include like just walking from one place to another place.
Well, because in that life, the only stasis you had was walking. Like walking was your home. It's such a cheesy line, but I love it. In the newest season of Twin Peaks, Michael Cera has this line. It's so silly because he's like trying to be a bad boy and he's not a bad boy. But he says, "The road is my dharma." But even though it was so silly, I actually laughed so hard because that's how I feel. And it's just so funny you say that, because I'm very similar. I can walk forever. Now I have a car, but when I used to not have a car for a long time, and when I used to travel and come back to the Bay Area, I would walk to all my favorite places, but these places were far. I'd walk to Tilden to go to my tree, Atkinson. Then I'd walk to Lake Merritt from Tilden, walk around Lake Merritt. Like walk 13 miles for fun. And my lifestyle I've always admired and wanted to be someone who never has a home and travels. And I really have been doing that for 7 years. And I did have one past life regression where I was living on a boat like sometime in maybe the 16 or 1700s. And I just loved it. I had a lot of memories of like the wind in my hair. I was a man with chest hair and long hair, and it was kind of like a montage of me like being like, I love the ocean, or like me on a beach shooting coconuts. I mean, who knows? I may have been doing really problematic stuff in that life, but all the memories I had of that life were actually no one else was there. It was just me enjoying moments of silence, either out on the open ocean or on tropical beaches. And I really feel that. I really feel that. I mean, I do really want a home, but I don't think I will ever get tired of movement. I really feel most like myself when I'm on the road. And there's something about it that's so romantic, and something about it that's so hard. It's challenging, and it can be scary, but it's addictive. Have you ever read the Sinbad, the 7 Journeys of Sinbad?
No, I've seen a film.
Oh, the film. No,
but it
doesn't do it justice. I actually want to do a 7-part episode on it, or maybe who knows, maybe 2 episodes I'll try to condense it, but it's one of the best stories ever told, in my opinion, because the story actually starts with a porter. There's a poor man who's a porter, and he is asked by a woman to collect all these things from the market and to take it to a rich man's house. And this porter is named Sinbad. And when he gets to this rich man's house, the rich man is also named Sinbad. So the rich man says, listen, sit down, I'll pay you for the day. I feel like I just want to tell you my life story. We have the same name. So this porter is like, great, what a great day off. So he sits down, and Sinbad tells him the story of his life. And he went on 7 journeys. Each journey is so crazy. He leaves town with all this money on a ship, and almost every journey he gets robbed. He loses all his fortune. He has to deal with giant animals, sea monsters, ape men. In every story, something horrible happens, and then by the end, he returns home with more money. But then after every journey, he gets tired of home. And so he doesn't need the money, but he decides to go on another journey. And then the same thing happens. Within the first month, he loses all his money, loses all his treasure, gets lost on an island, has to deal with a giant eagle, gets trapped in a valley of snakes with rubies in their mouths, just all this crazy shit. And after some of the journeys, he's gone for years. Wow. And every time he comes home with more money than he's ever had. And every time he stays home, he gets tired of home and he wants to go on another journey. And so this story, the reason why I just loved it so much is because part of why he wanted to tell his story is that he was too old to go on another journey. Mm-hmm. And so the second best thing was to tell a fellow Sinbad about his journey.
I love that. It's like the hero's journey 7 times over.
Exactly. It's exactly that. That's why I feel like traveling is the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. It's traveling brings out a really romantic experience within ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just my opinion. I'm sure other people might have their own way. But for me, traveling, and specifically traveling alone, has created and shown me how to be romantic with myself. Because spontaneity happens. You can't always be spontaneous with yourself. Mm-hmm. But you just end up in a country, end up in a town, and you show up at sunset, and then a stranger says, come stay at my house. And you say, cool. And then all of a sudden you meet lifelong friends and have the best meal of your life. And I just, things you couldn't even think of happen to you, and it's so romantic. And some of the most romantic moments in my life have been alone in a random country in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't even show you on a map because I don't fucking know. Watching the sunrise somewhere, so special.
I absolutely resonate with that. It's, the ability, when you're not at home, the ability to show up for yourself and allow synchronicities to unfold and point you to the next thing that you have no idea of, but when you look back on it, it all just, it's like a story because it unfolds appropriately as it should, to not leave you lost or to not leave you wondering what's going to go on and who's going to help me, or who, I landed in this country and I have no plans, but I know I'm going to be here 3 days later. So what do? Just let it unfold. And it's magical when you can really give yourself the trust to make it work, make the connections you need to. And I think there is a kind of necessity to not be in your comfort space, to not be in your home, to not be in your what you know, in order to do that.
Totally. And also to not have a daily routine, because daily routines, specifically obligations like work, really take a lot of your time and energy, that it really allows for less spontaneity in your life. And I notice that a lot when I have more time-consuming jobs that, or monotonous jobs, that it would just limit the freedom in my life, because even on a day off, someone will invite me somewhere and I'll say, ugh, I'm so tired. Fuck, I don't have time. I'm too tired. Even now, that's why I love being an artist, being a tattoo artist, because every time I tattoo someone, I get repeat clients, but I have new clients all the time, and I go to their houses. I'm seeing a new house, and it's like going into little cubbies of the world. I love going into strangers' houses, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the superpowers I wish I had, like not even in a creepy way, like it's okay if people weren't home, I would prefer it, but to like see the insides of houses, like it just fascinates me. How people decorate it, but also the architecture. Like your house, we're in your loft right now. We're in San Leandro. From the outside, it's like a warehouse. On the inside is this loft with high ceilings, all these beautiful tapestries. Like it's you would just never know from the outside.
Yeah. A little bit of magic. I like that too, though. Have you ever tried remote viewing?
Okay.
Because this is maybe an avenue to have your dream realized.
So I have tried remote viewing. Okay, so remote viewing. I've been fascinated in remote viewing for a long time. But what happens when I think about it is a fear comes up, because I know that the military uses it. And I don't know how true this is, but I have an irrational fear that if I got really good at it, because I have a feeling I would get really good, that I would become like a target. And I've had this fear my whole life that if I get too deep into my psychic powers, especially powers that are like reaching outwards in the human community, I fear that have you seen Dr. Sleep?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay. Dr. Sleep is amazing. I think you should watch it. I actually think that you would like it. It's a little bit corny. It's a Hollywood movie. I know you don't usually watch films, but I think you should watch it, and I'll summarize it. It's the sequel to The Shining.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
I've heard the book is much better, obviously. And so the movie strayed away from the book, also because Stanley Kubrick, I love Stanley Kubrick, rest in peace, I love you, you're racist. The movie The Shining was fucked up because Doc Halloran, who was the black man in the movie and in the book, who worked at the hotel, he is the one who tells Danny, the boy, about The Shining. In the book, there's a whole chapter where he says, "Oh, young boy, help me take my suitcases to my car." And he gets this boy in the car and he says, "Listen, I see you. You have what my grandmother calls The Shining." And it's a whole chapter where he talks to this child to be serious, and he's like, "You are brighter than most people I've ever seen. You need to know that this hotel has something going on." And he warns the boy, talks about his powers, talks about his grandma's powers. It's an amazing chapter. And he tells him, if something goes wrong, call me with your mind. And in the book, Danny calls him with his mind. Doc Halloran flies from Florida to Colorado, takes his car, makes it all the way up to the hotel, and saves him and his mom. In the movie, he shows up and he dies the second he opens the door into the hotel. It's fucked up.
Wow,
In the book,
I did not know that
in
was
the book, he
ending.
drives them out, and the hedge maze in the book, there's animals. There's a bunny, a dog, a cat, maybe, I forget. But there's 4 animals that are part of the hedge maze, and in the book the hedge maze is alive. So as they leave, the animals from the hedge maze chase them out. It's chilling.
Wow.
So I just wanted to bring that up because everyone should know that. Stanley Kubrick, shame on you. So in Dr. Sleep, already they kind of fuck it up, because in the movie Doc Halloran's a ghost and comes to Danny. But the premise of Dr. Sleep is Danny is now a middle-aged man, and basically in The Shining, his psychicness fed the hotel like fuel. So part of why their experience in the hotel was so violent was actually that Danny himself was like feeding it because he was so psychic. Also, his father, they don't really talk about this in the movie, but Jack Nicholson's character in the book gets addicted to the boiler room because the boiler room has all of the photographs and logs and like diaries of the hotel. So it's actually a combination of Danny, the innocent boy, kind of giving his psychic powers to the hotel, where his father is like reading through the hotel logs and looking at photos, and he spends all day in the boiler room. He's obsessed, and that's eventually where he sets the hotel on fire. Okay, so
I want to say there's maybe one scene in the movie that shows him doing that.
Yeah, it becomes an addiction in the book. Like, he's obsessed. It's really interesting. Okay, but I'm getting off topic. Dr. Sleep. Fast forward, Danny's a middle-aged man, and basically Doc Halloran had taught him a technique to put away these ghosts from the hotel, because even after he left the hotel, these phantoms had kind of clung to him like parasites. And so Doc Halloran had gifted him a like a jewelry box, like an ornate little box that you'd put treasures in. And he taught Danny to build that box in his mind and to put these phantoms away. So that's how he would deal with these phantoms. Okay, so the movie basically is that he's a nurse. He works at an elderly folks home, and they call him Dr. Sleep because basically he watches old people die. And he actually communicates with a cat, and the cat will sit on an old person's bed before they die. And so Danny will go into their room and spend their last night with them, and they start calling him Dr. Sleep because he seems to know miraculously when people die, but really he can just communicate with a cat. But he's been abusing alcohol because he feels so much. Obviously what happened to him as a kid was super traumatic, and he's been using alcohol for so many years, and at this point he's sober. But he has a very simple life. He lives in an attic in some town in New England, and basically he starts getting messages on his wall in chalk. I think the first message is hello. And he thinks he's crazy. He thinks maybe like he doesn't really know what's going on, but eventually he starts writing back in chalk on his wall. And the person writing to him is a little girl who's psychic. Her name's Abra. This girl's amazing. And this girl basically is kind of the main character of the film. And she is, I think, probably like 10, 11, and she is fully psychic. And so basically the subplot, the villains are a group of, the leader is basically a witch. She is what we would consider like an evil witch. I would say a user of dark magic, and what she does is preys upon children and sucks their soul out of their bodies, and then she and her group will eat their soul, and it keeps them young. And they have this huge RV. It's like they live the wealthy RV life. It's like a bus. It's super nice.
Classic Hollywood. Sucking the life of children to become younger.
And she does yoga. It's actually pretty amazing. But eventually, so Abra, this girl, is so psychic that one day she has a nightmare, and she watches them like eat the soul of a child, and she watches them bury this child somewhere in the woods, like in Ohio actually. They find this boy walking home from a baseball game, and he's on the side of a highway. We're in the middle of nowhere. They pick this kid up, they take his soul, and they bury him. And Abra watches this in her dreams. And so she ends up finding Danny through this magical chalkboard, and she says, listen, like, you're the only adult I know who is on the same page as me right now, and I need your help. I'm pretty sure a boy's been murdered. And so she is like desperately trying to get Danny to be her ally, because obviously her parents have no idea what the fuck she's on. You know what I mean? Like, she's fully magic. So eventually Danny finds her. Danny literally like takes a bus and finds her in her town, and they actually meet in person. They become friends, and she tells him how important this is to her. And sure enough, he and his friend somehow, like, I forget how it all happens, but they drive her out to Ohio, and they find this boy's body. So they're like, okay, Abra, like, we need to find these people, you know. So they ask her to meditate, and she meditates, and she finds this witch woman, and she's at like a corner store getting like a drink, and this witch woman is so powerful that she can see her. And that's where the movie really begins, because in the astral plane, these people can see each other, and this witch woman is powerful. I mean, she has terrible intentions, but some of the scenes are crazy. I'm making this way too long of a tangent. My point is, I've been afraid to channel some of my powers because I've been afraid of entities, and specifically human beings that have their radar out for people doing that kind of stuff. I watched a military documentary about it, and the people that spearheaded the program in the CIA had like heard that it was possible and just tried it out for fun. And two guys started. One guy didn't really have a lot of success, and one guy had a lot of success. And in parts of the documentary, they kept it ambiguous, but I think they were kind of mentioning that, like, it's, I don't know. They were like mentioning that they could know when people in other governments were doing the same thing. Like, they could be aware of each other. So that scares me.
I wonder, do you know anybody who was in this documentary? Was Russell Targ a part of it, or does that ring a bell?
I have no idea. I watched this probably like 8 years ago.
Okay. Wow, okay. Well, yeah, maybe I have some information to share with you later.
Please. Well, share now.
Okay. Well, remote viewing can be simple. It can be something that, like, is just a fun exercise. It doesn't have to be the whole deep, dark thing, which, yes, our governments have used it to spy on other governments. But I think what I'm interested in, and what I'm most, like, kind of want to start playing with more, is just this idea of, like, tuning in to a meditative state to receive messages. And, like, yeah, we all do this on some level, whether it's even just like praying or just meditation or setting an intention even. Yeah, simply setting an intention with presence and with meditation, I think, could be similar. But there is this interesting concept, and it's kind of like a practice that you involve with remote viewing that is basically allowing you to recognize your left brain patterns versus your right brain patterns. And I think the power in it, or the ability to do that, like tune into your left brain, your right brain, know what they do, know what thoughts arise, like, well, let me go into this. Let me give the example, and then I'll go into the more concepts. So when you're remote viewing, you want to, there's a target, and usually the person you're working with will know what the target is. If they don't, then that's what a double blind is. And then there can even be a triple blind where nobody knows, but then you discover what it is. And all of these have been done through remote viewing. But basically the process is to get to identify something that comes into your awareness without naming it. So the left brain is the part that wants to name it, right? It wants to like identify and name it and say, oh, I know what this is, and I have a history of this, and I have a memory of this, and all of those ruminations that then go on, and you just follow that train, and you leave the identifier behind. But what you're trying to do in remote viewing is recognize the identifiers. And it could be a color, it could be a feeling, it could be a shape. And the idea is, and you can practice this with any object that you pick up, and just describe the object. I'm holding a singing bowl in my hand right now. And that would be to name it. But I could also say there's a round, cool to the touch object that is shiny. I can see the light reflecting in it. It has symbols on it. There's some sort of ink or characters written on it. I can hold it in my hand. So all of those descriptors would be right brain activity. And then when you go into saying like, oh, I know what that is, and then you go into that, then you're moving into the left brain, and your left brain takes you. I really hope I'm not flipping this. I think this is what it is.
No, that would make sense. It would make sense to try to use the right brain first, and then the left brain. Because if you just use the left brain, then you're gonna name something before you have a sure idea.
Right, and when you name it, then you're just going into your own human, personal, lived experience of whatever that thing is. So you're, in a sense, time traveling, basically. You're just bringing your memories into the present reality. So the idea with remote viewing is get outside of this naming, I know what it is, even if it looks familiar, I'm not going to call it this, but instead I'm moving into this observational perspective. And remote viewing, call it what it is, like it could be a spying situation, or people could use it for things that are good or bad or whatever their intention is. But I think the interesting part is the practice of it. You can actually get familiar with these activities that are going on in your own brain to where you can isolate what gives presence to something. And if you can recognize that naming something or bringing in a memory of what you already know or what you've already experienced of it is actually removing your ability to tune into the field or tune into presence by being the observer of what's going on, being the observer of your thoughts, being the observer of the emotions that come up in your body when somebody screams at you, and you have the ability to just be the observer, let the emotions come through and not have them overtake you. There's this great power of presence with your ability to be able to recognize where these thoughts come from and where these other thoughts come from. So for me, like, remote viewing is fun, and I've tried it a couple times, and it's like a fun exercise, and I would love to play with it more. But I think what I'm most interested in is this aspect of like being able to use different parts of our brain intentionally to achieve states of being for whatever reason.
Ooh, that resonates with me so much, because I am aware how much we categorize and label things is keeping us out of the present. I've never heard about this technique about integrating both sides of your brain. I want to hear about your experiences remote viewing. How did it go? And what did you see? What did you find?
It was so the first experience I had was with Alan Steinfeld, and he's doing an interview with Russell Targ. Russell Targ is someone who has worked with the military. When the CIA found out about what he was doing, and it's funny hearing him recount. I want to want to say he's still alive. He's pretty old at this point. He's been doing this work for decades. And it's funny to hear him recount it, because he says one of the most paranormal things that we were doing was being supported by the military with these remote viewing experiences. Like, that alone was the most paranormal thing from his perspective. Because for him it was like this consciousness experiment that he was doing with his colleagues
for fun.
But then obviously, like, we now know what the military had in mind for spying on other countries' militaries. But he was supported by the government to do these remote viewing processes. So Alan Steinfeld, in this video that I watched, is interviewing him, and Russell Targ is kind of like walking him through the process. And he says, I have something in my pocket. I want you to, during the interview, I want you to go through this process just so you can show the viewers what the process is like, and I'll explain, Russell says, as he's walking him through it, I'll explain what you need to, how you need to address this as we're going through it. So he has an object in his pocket, and basically I just followed along with Alan. Before I watched the whole thing, I paused it and did my own remote view of that, where I just tuned in to the thing, and I drew a few symbols, and then a few colors came up, and it was something similar to what the object was. The object he showed was an apple corer, like the thing that you press down on the apple and it cores it and makes slices. And I kind of saw, like, I kept seeing bicycle parts, and I saw a bicycle wheel.
Yeah.
But I didn't, like, because of the whole identifier, I was going away from the bicycle wheel. So I was like, no, I can't name what this thing is. I can't just draw a bicycle wheel. This is not the activity that we're trying to do. I'm just trying to come up with either symbols or colors or, like, describe this thing. And it's funny because the colors that came up were flashing red, green, yellow, which are the color of apples. But like afterwards, I pieced that together. But during, it was like kind of confusing. Basically, what I drew was like a crossing, like a round thing with crossing metal pieces in it.
That's pretty good.
And it didn't look exactly like what it was, but I had an idea of this object. And it wasn't like I could see the object in my mind. It was more like I had hints of what this object is, or it's hard to describe how because it's not as much like an image. It's hard for me to explain. But anyway,
I hear you. Information was landing in your mind, and it not in image format. But I mean, it is hard to explain how information works in your mind. It was just landing in there.
Yeah. It was almost like it was there, and I was looking through a tube or something to try to like see what the thing is. Like, I'm looking through a straw and looking through that straw through a keyhole, and there's an object on the other side of the door, and I'm staring through this thing trying to see it. And so it doesn't really come in as like, oh, this is what it is, it's this object, because this is what Russell then goes in to explain, this is the part of the brain that we don't want to allow to get into this process, because the left brain, which is like, oh, I know what this is, I have a memory of that, it takes you out of the moment. You're time traveling at that point.
Or more likely, it's going to be like, I don't know what this is, and it's just going to try to like go through the Rolodex of words and memories
or
to try to put
bicycle
content.
Tire.
Right, exactly.
This is a bicycle tire, and
because that's what your left brain already did. It was like, oh, bicycle tire. I know what that is. That's the closest thing I can think of. Yep. Because Yeah, an apple core. I've seen one. I know what it is, but that wouldn't be my left brain wouldn't come up with that. That's something way in the back of my Rolodex of objects.
Yeah, so staying in the place of observation, which there's a lot of power here when you're going through an emotional situation too, let alone remote viewing. If you're able to have an angry situation come up and you're able to observe your own anger and able to act outside of that own anger, there's so much power in your ability to bring presence to the people that are involved in that situation with you, let alone yourself.
Oh my God, I need that.
And so there's a lot there, but it's cool and it's fun to like have these exercises to activate these parts of ourselves where we can kind of like sharpen this tool of sharpening my right brain and being the observer of something that comes in. And I think it also, why I'm interested in it, because I think that's the part of the brain that's more activated when we're channeling.
Yeah.
Or when we're in states of bliss or ecstasy, or like, really just fully present in the moment of whatever the moment has for you.
Pure creativity. The other thing that I never thought about that's really cool about your story is that you were watching a video, so it was past 10, so your remote viewing was actually time travel, and you were remote viewing in the past, which then brings up the implication that theoretically you could remote view super far into the past, which really interests me. That's actually something that really, that I would love to spend more of my time and attention looking at.
Or far distances. One of the examples that Russell Targ gives, that he was working with a man named Ingo Swann, who, if you haven't heard of him, he's done some pretty wild teleportation type like stuff with his mind that is cutting edge science, let's just say that. So in the 80s, I'm really not good with dates. I'm just saying the 80s because it was like
loosely.
Yeah, when I was really young.
Okay.
Russell Targ did a remote view. There was a few people involved, and Ingo Swann went to Jupiter, did a remote view, and saw that there was an icy ring around Jupiter. And this was actually before NASA had discovered that there was a ring. There was like ice crystals around Jupiter. And so this is a prime example that he gives of like, this is one example of how this can be used for discoveries or for, viewing things that can help science, basically. That they kind of discovered that Jupiter had an icy ring around it before there were satellite photos or before there were like actual evidence of it happening.
Whoa. This is reminding me of Project Pegasus a little bit. Have you heard about all that?
I'm not familiar.
Shout out to And That's Why We Drink, which is a podcast. And M, who's on the podcast, did a 2-part episode. So I forget all the names, I forget all the specifics, but basically Tesla had been, Nikola Tesla had been working on a whole bunch of technologies. A big one being free energy, which I'm sure you know about. But allegedly, he had also been working on a teleportation machine, to keep it simple. And I don't think that was publicly known, but the U.S. military approached him and basically demanded that Nikola Tesla work with the military, and he refused. So, of course, he died mysteriously, 2 weeks later, and they never found his body, and oh, all of his papers are missing from his laboratory. Classic. So as the story goes,
just a little interject.
Uh-huh.
The person who confiscated all of his materials, briefcases, projects, John G. Trump.
Stop!
Trump's great uncle or something like that.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Oh my god, I just got chills. I had no idea. Stop. See, this is why I love talking to you. Even stories that you don't know, like you still have facts to interject. That's a really good fact. So basically, Project Pegasus. So how this all became public knowledge is Nikola Tesla's papers were confiscated and then basically handed off to some scientist. And they were like, your job now is that you work for the government and you're going to make this shit happen. And the scientist was specifically in charge of this teleportation machine, quote unquote. And really what it was, so the man who brought this story to the public was the son of this scientist. Now he's an adult. But back in the 70s, when they were really fine-tuning this kid was like 8 years old. So he would actually sometimes visit his dad at work and see this thing. And he described it like a plasma curtain. Like it was like an archway that when it was turned on, it created like a plasma, like almost like liquid lava lamp, like particle curtain. And they were trying to fine tune it as a teleportation machine. But this is fucked up. But allegedly, while they were fine tuning it, they were using orphans from South America to put through it because they hadn't perfected it. So sometimes they'd come back like completely dismembered or with their body parts, and like they're basically had been chopped and screwed.
Dismembered.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really, really fucked up. So basically his dad ended up perfecting it, and he took his son through the machine with him. And so I think they were in upstate New York or something. They walked through it and they ended up in front of the Capitol building in Albuquerque, New Mexico or something. And then they started realizing that sending adults through, because they started using it as a time traveling machine. And they realized that they couldn't send adults through because adults would essentially go crazy after time traveling. So they used children because children had a different experience of time, and I think a little bit of like detachment from what we call like sanity. And then by the time they were like teenagers, they would transition them out. And then this kid, because he was like a part of this top secret program, transitioned into a space program. This is what made me think of all of this. He claimed that there's a space program for very, very high-powered, like well-connected teenagers where they send you to other planets via teleportation, where you, I don't know, like murder other life forms or just like do stuff. So he claimed that he went to Mars and met like scorpion people and stuff. Now this guy is like a lawyer and is trying to get all of this stuff public. He was apparently like trying to file a lawsuit, I think, with the US government because he was saying that like it's like a crime that this hasn't been declassified yet because of like I think there is a time period thing that things have to be declassified after a certain amount of time. And I think he was saying that
like 40 years, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's what his lawsuit was about. And he had done a lot of time traveling. So one of the things he claims, there's actually a photo of the Gettysburg Address, and he claims that he went to the Gettysburg Address and there's a photo of him. He also said that one really big thing that the government wanted him to witness was the murder of Abraham Lincoln, and he said he went so many times. Like they kept sending him back, and he actually ended up in a loop and saw himself, and he said it got really messy, which is really crazy. And then another thing this guy talked about was going to the future. And one of the futures he went to in this, because he did this in the 70s, one of the futures he went to, they gave him a VHS tape. And they were like, what's this? And it wasn't until like the 80s that they could watch it. And it had video reels of like major natural disasters and disasters. And then another thing, so because he was going to the future, he ended up going to different futures. So he said one of the futures he went to was in like 2038 or something. And it was like a green future where everything was, all the buildings had plants growing on them. And they had created peace on Earth. And he said that was his favorite future.
Wow. Mine too.
Yeah, mine too. But he talked a lot about planets. That's what made me think of all of that. Because he did some remote viewing, or I guess it wasn't remote viewing. They had built some machine. It sounds like Napoleon Dynamite, but the government had built some machine, or I guess his dad built it, where they had arranged crystals. I don't know what crystals, he wasn't specific, but arranged crystals in some kind of semicircle or something, and then there was some kind of like head apparatus, but that would allow you to remote view into the future and past, but not physically go. But then the plasma,
like scrying, maybe, like
yeah,
a scrying machine.
Yeah, like a scrying machine, totally,
okay.
A scrying machine.
Okay.
And
it's probably obsidian.
Yeah, probably. He said that, you know what's so funny, which doesn't surprise me. He said that the first thing that they had him do that they were most interested in was the crucifixion of Christ. They're like, we need to know, report back. That's the first thing on the list.
Wow.
But I do wonder what this person saw on Jupiter, because from what I understand, Jupiter is a gas giant. So if your consciousness is there, I don't know. I want to try it. I want a remote view on Jupiter. That sounds interesting.
Me too. I mean, I want to go to Venus or see Pluto.
I would love to see other star system. I feel like
the Sirius A and Sirius B binary star system. Like, see that from close up, or the Horsehead Nebula, go inside of it or something. Yeah,
I think, the older I'm getting, I actually am really interested in life. Like, I would love to go to I would love to remote view a populated planet with intelligent life and just peek into their world. I think that's why Star Wars really became such a cultural phenomenon, because I think we all deep down know that there are other planets with life, and just entertaining those thoughts is scary but exciting and intriguing, because it there's so much that we couldn't imagine. What would they look like? What kind of molecular makeup is on their planet? So, like, how does that change architecture and innovation?
Yeah, there's so much to wonder, so much to see, so much to wonder about, so much to explore.
I'm gonna try remote viewing. You've swayed me.
I mean, I think we should do a little experiment where we just each have an object and, like, practice viewing that with each other, and then show each other what it is and do it again, maybe involve other people, pass it on. Yeah, it could be totally a remote experiment.
Should we do one now?
Sure, we can.
I'm gonna do one. I'm gonna do one for you.
Okay. Let me get a piece of paper.
Yeah, get a piece of paper. I'm gonna put it behind my back. Would it be distracting if I told you about a UFO I saw while you do this? Okay, cool. So, one of the craziest UFOs I ever saw was here in Oakland. And I was living on East 22nd and 21st in this ridiculous house. I was in the backyard doing yoga, and it was probably like 7 p.m. at night. It was a super overcast night, and from above I saw, they almost looked like searchlights, but they were coming from above the clouds, and there was 8 of them, and they were doing this thing where 4 of them would come to the center and 4 of them would go out making a circle, and they would alternate like just these searchlights. But as I was staring at them, I realized that I thought maybe they were like coming from like a party or like the Oakland Coliseum or something, but I realized that they were coming from above the clouds, and they were in this like synchronized pattern. And as I watched them for like 10 minutes, after about 10 or 15 minutes, all the lights, they synced up. So all of them came to the center and then moved to the outside, and then they started staggering again. So they were actually on this like complex cycle where like after 7 minutes they were doing at the complete opposite, where as one was at the very center, the other was on the very outside, but they were slowly staggered so that they'd sync back up again and then go back out of sync. And I watched this happen for like almost 30 minutes, and I got freaked out and went inside. Because then I started Googling, like, is this like technology you can buy? Like, maybe is this a plane? Is this a helicopter? Like, I was just trying to like rationalize what the fuck it could be, because it was so weird.
When was this?
2015, right after I had met you. Like, I think I was working with you, but I'd only been working with you for like a month, maybe.
Wow. That's funny that you went inside.
I got freaked out, yeah.
You were like, this is too much.
Well, I was excited at first, and then I got freaked out.
Yeah.
Another really crazy UFO I saw was in Brazil. I saw a lot of UFOs in Brazil. So many. But the craziest was when I was at a beach called Pipa. It's in the north. And on this beach, they have these sandstone cliffs, like red sandstone cliffs that are flat. And then the cliffs drop off, and then there's beach and like just ocean forever. And Cheyenne and I were sleeping on the cliffs. We were staying in a hostel with a tent, but we just thought it was cooler to sleep on the cliff, like under the stars. So we were sleeping on this cliff, and I sleep through the night, every night. I'm a solid sleeper. We both woke up at the same time, wide awake, and within 5 seconds of waking up, a star in the sky grew to like bigger than the full moon, like twice the size of the full moon, and then shrink down to a star, and then grew back to the size, like a double the size of the full moon, and it just kept undulating for like 10 minutes. And at first we're like, are we going crazy? Like, what the fuck is happening? And we just watched it probably for like 10 minutes, and then it just disappeared. And then the next night, we slept out there for I think 3 or 4 nights. And every time we slept out there, we would wake up in the middle of the night. And as we woke up, it would happen.
Wow. There are a lot of people who will go in talking about regression. They will get regressed to UFO experiences and uncover contact experiences that they've had with like star family or other beings wanting to make contact. If this happened multiple times, I would be interested to go into that if I were you. Like, maybe remote viewing, but more like get regressed and go to those times and see what is that to you. If this has happened multiple times, there's got to be some tie-in to like something deeper with you, I would think.
Well, that's a good point, because technically before it started, we would be fast asleep, and then soon after it disappeared, we'd fall back asleep. It was in the middle of the night. So technically, while we were sleeping, all kinds of things could have been happening to our bodies and or astral bodies.
Mm-hmm. How many times did that you were...
Like minimum 3 times, like up to 5 or 6, probably 5 times.
Wow. That's cool.
And it was over the course. I think we were there for like a week and a half. We spent half the nights out on the cliff. It was not, it was hard to sleep on the cliff, but it was so much more beautiful. So I think we were like alternating, give or take, almost every other night to give our backs a break. But it was just so beautiful.
Wow.
But it was weird. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And what was weird was that we were waking up every time right before it started.
That's wild. That's cool. Okay, I'm going to tune in again, and then we'll go back to this remote viewing experience.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know what this means, but here's what came to me. So I'm going to describe kind of like a check mark shape, and greenish yellow as a color, and then this shape of like almost like an ice cream cone came up, and then the idea of like fibers being a part of whatever this object is. So that's what came up for me.
Interesting. Well, what I had was a cube that you plug into your chargers into. But what maybe happened is that you were tuning into a different channel, or you were seeing the energy waves of this thing.
Maybe.
But you know what this makes me think of? One of my favorite chapters of Autobiography of a Yogi. The cabbage chapter. Do you remember that? There's this chapter where Yogananda has these 2 cabbages that he grew and spent months caring for like little babies, and he wanted to gift Sri Yukteswar with these cabbages. And so he had hid them under his bed, and his bed was at like the top attic secret room in the ashram. And every morning they'd go on their morning walk to the beach, and while they were on the beach, Sri Yukteswar said, "You didn't lock the door." And Yogananda said, yes, I locked the door. I always lock the door. I totally locked the door. And Sri Yukteswar said, no, you didn't. And then Yogananda was like, no, I think I did. I know I did. And then on their way home, on the road, they saw like a wild man. Like he had like, you could just see from far away that his eyes were glazed over. This guy was wild. And just kind of walking with a little bit of a tweak in his step. And as they looked at him, he like stood to attention. And he like, almost like a wild animal, like kind of like turned his head and just shot off towards the ashram. And so Yogananda was like, oh my God, I should chase after him. And Sri Yukteswar was like, no, we're going to wait right here. And the man was really quick. He like went into the ashram. He left. They saw him leave. And Yogananda runs into the house. He runs to his room, which is up like 2 flights of stairs, up a ladder. He had gold on his bed. He had like gold jewelry on his bed. And he goes under the bed where the 2 cabbages were, and the cabbages are gone. And that was the only thing that this guy had stolen. And he talks to Sri Yukteswar about it, and he's like, how the fuck did this happen? Did you tell him to take the cabbages? Did you know about the cabbages? And Sri Yukteswar said something about consciousness almost like the radio, or like channels. This is why channeling is such a good word, because our consciousness, we can use it like a radio and tap into different channels. And he was saying this guy was like, from our point of view, so crazy, but really he was just so open and couldn't really make sense. So he was just catching different channels that were in the air. And he was basically saying, like, you were thinking so much about these cabbages that he caught the channel. It came through for him. So he went and got him.
He knew exactly where they were hidden.
Isn't that so funny?
Yeah, I remember that. I love that book.
I love that book. I really want to reread it. It's such a good book. If you're, I saw it on your shelf. If you're listening right now and you haven't read Autobiography of a Yogi, you gotta read it. I'm not gonna lie, I was resistant at first to read it because I mentioned earlier, full circle, that I did a problematic teacher training. And all of these annoying yoga ladies were like, oh, I've read autobiography. And so I was like, ugh, I'm not gonna read that book, whatever. But then it just kept coming up in my life. You were reading it, and you had found it on Cap Street, right?
It found me.
Yeah, wait, this is a good story. You should tell this story.
Yeah, I was in a book club in Chicago with a good friend of mine, Donna Ray, and a couple other people were like in and out of it, but it was mainly she and I that were like interested in diving into these books. She was currently reading Autobiography of a Yogi when we formed the book club, and I was like, okay, well, you're already halfway through it, let's pick another one. And just through our, I don't know, 6 months, year of like doing this and going through different books, it kept coming up, and I just, every time she mentioned it, there was just something in me that was like, remember that, take note of it. And so fast forward like for three or 4 years after I moved to the Bay Area, I don't actually remember the reason that it came back in my awareness, but I remember I went to a bookstore and I was looking for a book, so maybe that was it. Maybe it was just like I want a book to read, and I had looked for this book in the bookstore that I was in, and they didn't have it. And so it was like, okay, make a mental note. I need to find this book still. Like, it's still something that I gotta dive into because like I did this book club and never got into it. Well, it was, I want to say, only like a day, 2 days, maybe 3 days after I was in this bookstore looking for a book to read, and like Autobiography of a Yogi came up, like, oh yeah, I've wanted to read this. So then I'm walking to Dolores Park. I live in the Mission, and I'm walking to Dolores Park, and I'm walking down Cap Street.
And just before you keep going, paint a little picture of Cap Street, for those of us who don't know about Cap Street.
Okay, so, well, Dolores Park, where I'm headed to, is like, I called it it's the collective backyard of everyone who lives in the Mission. So it's like a park where everyone just hangs out, has a picnic, drink wine, smoke a joint, whatever. Like, you just do your hangouts.
The area by the bathroom apparently was considered a vortex by the Native Americans. Apparently, that's what I've heard.
I have also heard that.
And
I don't know if
feel it.
Yeah. So Dolores Park's very special, and it's like, I was just on my way there to hang out one day, and along my way, I'm walking along Cap Street, which many things can be found along Cap Street. It's kind of a neighborhood that might be nice to live in. Like, there's some like nice homes around there, but also you may find like someone who just shed their entire outfit, socks and shoes included, and like left it all there, and then there's like some human feces right next to that,
some needles,
and
maybe
some needles in the gutter there. There's a lot of weird stuff that you may find,
and a lot of warehouses. I think nowadays it's less dangerous because the Mission is so gentrified, but I think back in the 70s and 80s a lot more people were like doing black market enterprises out of the warehouses on Cap Street, and there's not a lot of traffic. It's usually pretty empty.
Yeah. Yes, which it was very empty this day that I was walking to Dolores Park. And I see in front of me, maybe like 10, 12 feet in front of me, there's a book on the sidewalk, in the middle of the sidewalk, faced towards me. And it's like, it's not in a box somewhere. It's not just, I don't know. It was just placed there so pristinely, and it's Autobiography of a Yogi. And it was this book I had been looking for, and it literally found me on my way to the park. So
I love that story. Is it this copy?
That's the one. That's the book.
Oh my God.
So I went ecstatic. I just flipped out. And
it's in great condition.
I just sat there cracking up on the sidewalk, like looking up to the sky, like, thank you.
And just for some context, people, I'm holding the very copy right now, okay? We're talking about a paperback in very good condition.
It's a little
the cover has some
bleached, but
yeah, the cover has some folds, but there's barely any water damage. Like, the pages are still crisp. It's not, I've seen paperbacks that have been through a lot. This paperback is in great condition, and you found it on Cap Street. This is crazy.
It was by itself. There was nothing else around it. That was the biggest thing for me, because like, oftentimes people will leave a box of like, free, take this.
Right, or maybe it was like in a pile of things. Like, it was just by itself. And just sitting there waiting for you. I love that story. You're so magic. You're so magic. And you know what? I actually think that story was a big influence in why I read it. Because I think you told me that and I hadn't read it yet. Mm-hmm. And that was like, you know what? That's really fucking cool. And at that point, it was in my zeitgeist. Everyone, it was just coming up for me all the time. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible book.
It is. The examples of embodiment. There's no book better that I've read that gives lived experiences of embodying specific I don't know what to call it, but like the embodiment of truth that he lived, the embodiment of like trust in life, in the unfolding, the embodiment of divinity in human form that he obtained eventually, and presence and just, it's
one of my favorite parts of the book that is so unexpected or I wasn't expecting was he chose to become a yogi at a very young age. And he ran away from home as like a young teenager to be a yogi. And throughout his life, he encounters his family and his father and his siblings, and they're actually like really hurt that he left. And for him, it's like, oh, why? For him, it was just his only life path. Like that's he had to do it. But it's interesting to watch him console his older siblings and his father, and he shows up for them with such presence and care
and non-judgment,
almost like a parent would. He's so present. And when you read the book, it's so crazy because even though all the words are in written form, there's a couple photos, but it feels like you are watching his life as he's living it. And he tells everything in the past tense, but it feels so real, because he's so present. It's really, really amazing. And then there's chapters that get pretty supernatural. You know, there's one chapter, if you're not convinced to read it yet, there's this amazing chapter. There's a chapter in his life where he opens a school for boys. Is it just for boys? I forget, but it's for orphans and or people of low income. It's for anyone. It's a free school in India where you can learn education and also learn things about
yoga
practices. And he talked one day that he was hanging out with a couple of younger boys. They went out to look at the trees, and he was just really tapped in that day. And so the boys were saying like, what is my life gonna be like? And he just wasn't even thinking, he was just saying things. And he said, oh, you're gonna have 3 kids, and you're gonna have, and he was just kind of saying things. And one of the boys said like, what about me? And without even thinking, he said, you're gonna be dead within the year. And this boy like was like, what? And this boy started crying. And he said like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't even realize what I was saying. And he said like, listen, like your future isn't certain. Your future is forever changing. So like, let's make sure that you're okay. So he tells the boy like, stay at the school, stay safe, like don't go home. Because this boy came from a really like low income family. But Yogananda ended up going on a trip to the United States or something, and the boy's father insisted that the boy came home for the holidays. And he came from Kolkata, and sadly, while the boy went home on that trip, he drank some water that was contaminated and died of dehydration. And so he died within the year. And Yogananda felt so bad, he felt so guilty because he had promised this boy that he would help him change his fate. That when he found out the news, he started praying to this boy's spirit. And he was trying to locate the boy so that when he reincarnated, that he could keep his vow to him. And so he said for 3 months, he was meditating all the time. He was trying to contact the boy, and nothing was coming through. And 3 months later, he was in Kolkata, and he was just in some random neighborhood standing on a bridge, and he thought of the boy. He was like, I bet you now's the time that he's choosing a family. And so he said that he put both of his arms up in the air like antenna. That was his idea, that his arms would be antenna. People were looking at him like a crazy person. And he just kept both arms in the air and followed the vibes. He just followed the vibes, and he walked through alleyways and streets and was just turning corners and just following the flow until he came to a gate. And so he knocked on the gate. A man came and was like, what do you want? And he said, do you have a woman in there that's pregnant? And he said, yeah. And he said, I need to talk to you guys. And I guess because he was dressed as a yogi, it was clear he was a yogi. They trusted him. They let him in, and he explained the story. and he told him the boy's name, and he told him the promise he made to this boy, and he said, "You are now pregnant with this boy, with his spirit, and I would like to offer him a free tuition to my school. He's welcome to come." And the parents ended up giving him the same name, and they sent him to the school, and he lived a happy, healthy life.
Oh, I love that. I also like how you tell stories because it just takes me there. I just remember reading it when you say it. It's like, yeah, I'm not as good at pulling stories out of a book that I read a while ago, but yeah, it's pretty magical. There's so many moments in it that it's just like, this is someone's life that could be a movie, or even individual things could be a great story in themselves, let alone like all this huge compilation of the magic that this person lived.
Yeah. And I guess I haven't read that many biographies or autobiographies, but I've never really heard a story of someone's life that's this detailed. I mean, it's only like, what, 500, 600 pages, but it really feels like you were there for a huge part of his life. Unlike a movie or a book that I've read that feels kind of impersonal and like a summary. This feels transportive, this book.
Yeah, it feels like he was writing it every moment that he was living it. And then when you're rereading it, you're like going back to his actual accounts of what happened rather than him remembering it and writing it, which seems like what usual autobiographies are.
And it's what his is too. I mean, he talks in the past tense,
right?
But he was so
just
present.
Has this presence.
It's so amazing, you guys. You have to read it. It's so cool. And fun fact, there is a self-realization fellowship in Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been, but I know it exists. Well, Michael, I could talk to you forever, but we've been talking for 1 hour and 57 minutes.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
It's been 2 hours.
It's been 2 hours.
I believe it. I feel like, yeah, I feel the same. I could just talk to you for days on end, probably.
It's so fun, but it's really fun for me to have a playmate, if you will, have a play date about supernatural things, magical things, extraterrestrial things, because this is the type of stuff that is floating around in my mind all day. And sometimes I find myself making space for other people, and they want to talk about interpersonal relationships and their jobs, and I get it, that's what they're processing every day, but I want to talk about multidimensional space-time. I want to talk about government programs. I want to talk about teleportation and remote viewing.
Yeah.
And magic
And consciousness exercises.
Yeah.
Ways to expand our consciousness. Ways to interact with each other that could be fun and playful and expanding our consciousness.
Yeah.
All together. Let's get creative with it.
Yeah. And relaxing. That's something like I'm realizing with my meditation practice, because when I meditate, I go on kind of like vision quests. I have like dreams while awake, if you will. It's relaxing and energizing. It's inspiring and relaxing. Like, it's perfect. But anyway, now here I go again. It was so fun to talk with you. Such a treat, as always. I love you. I appreciate you. And I'm so happy that I manifested you. Similarly, like you manifested Autobiography of a Yogi.
I'm very grateful too. It was kismet at the time when we met. And I did not know it, but you did. And I love that there was that relationship of like, you were like, no, I know what I'm manifesting, and you're describing it. So I'm in.
Yeah, here's my number, and you will call me. And we, like, believe me. You're welcome.
And I did believe you.
And
This is a note to anyone out there who knows what they want in their life. You can manifest it, and when the person shows up describing that thing you've manifested, you can recognize that maybe they have something for you, but maybe also you are a gift to them. And that's how I feel.
That's beautiful. And to believe in yourself, because as a reminder, the day I met you, you were like, we're not hiring. And it was already so magic that I was like, no, you are. You're hiring. I know you are. Just take my number. You're going to need it. And you called me, I think, within 2 weeks. That's nothing. And you know what? I know the day that you called me. I'll Google it. You called me the day David Bowie died. I love David Bowie. I think it was like January 9th.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that too.
January 10th. It was January 10th, 2016. So we had met right before the New Year's 2015. And then on January 10th, 2016, I was driving back up from
Death Valley or Arizona?
Yeah, Joshua Tree. I was driving back up from Joshua Tree, and I had just found out David Bowie died. I had barely slept. It was freezing. I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't have a job. And then you called me.
With a job.
And then I got a job. And that was so fun. I guess, right, that would be a story for another time. But that would be a fun... It doesn't really have a lot to do with the podcast. But that was a fun job. Mm-hmm. And truly,
there was a lot of manifestation, cross manifestation from different people that happened.
Cross-pollination.
Yes, cross-pollination.
It was crazy, and then we were raided by the police. But that truly is a story for another time. I wish you all a beautiful day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. If you have something you would like to add, email in at esotericaandnonsense@gmail.com. Be my friend. I like friends. I love you. Over and out.